to our workshop. We are going to be talking to you about a Telepresense robot called AV1 and a project that we're involved in. My name is Cath. I'm a teacher on the medical crew, and my colleague Sarah will introduce herself. Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello. Hello.
So, this is Sarah. She's somewhere out there. She's operating AV1 through an iPad, which we will talk to you about in a minute. But you can see it's her voice that's coming through. That's a really important part of it. Why are we talking about this? Why Telepresence solution? What is it all about? Well, actually, there was some research done, and that was the kind of figure they came up with, the number of children in the UK missing school. Interestingly, there is no data available that tells you how many sick children there are. I mean, unbelievable. There's absence data, there's attendance data, there's child death data, there's public health data, but there is nothing that tells you how many children are out there who are too unwell to attend school because they are sick. We are working with MPs on that and about why there isn't. And Sarah and I recently attended a round table which was fascinating. One person to me and it wasn't his fault, so to be fair. Schools have their statutory requirements supporting children with medical needs in the schools. It's tough. When you've got lowering budgets, you really want to be inclusive. How can you keep touch with those children with medical needs who cannot attend school when you're obviously managing it? Education is a fundamental right of the child. I've been working in the medical group, started off in hospital school for 20 years. They are the most marginalised, vulnerable group that we work with anywhere because they are like the forgotten children. And not only are they forgotten, but they are invisible. Because they're not out causing problems, causing trouble on the street. They're at home, can't come out of their bedrooms if they're too anxious, or they're in hospital. They are largely ignored. So it takes people like us who work in the sector to shout out the back of their and obviously a blast between said companies and so the project came on the back of the Forgotten Children report, which was published last July by the All-Parliamentary Select, Cross-Party All-Parliamentary Select Committee, who did an inquiry into alternative provision. So the Forgotten Children report came out. At the same time, the government had to publish their response. There was a document called Creating Opportunities report, where they're actually looking at the reforms to alternative provision. Of course, we've now got the Interim report, and that's coming along as well. So there was £9 million up for grabs for alternative provision, which was incredibly exciting in all the years I have known it. So, typical Department of Education, 4 weeks to get bidded, 2 of those Easter holidays, and restricted number of words. Anyway, fortunately I do a lot of work nationally in this sector. On the phone to my colleagues saying, will you join me in this bid? And everyone's going, yes, Cath, you write it. You know, the usual thing. So we put in our bid, we had an interim interview, etc. But actually we were successful. And what was really, really good for us is actually we were the group that won the biggest amount of money and the only one really focusing on medical needs. And what that said to us was actually maybe we're starting to see a shift around to medical needs. That's the title of it. Not actually snappy, I'm not going to lie, but it was about improving transitions for children, because you know what it is with bids and you have to meet the criteria. So one of them was about transition. So children who are away from school because they are unwell, they miss their mates, they miss their school, and if they've been on long term, they get anxious about attending and coming back. And actually, why would you go back? Because everybody's forgotten about you. And we'll talk a little bit about the interim findings. We're only 6 months into the project because it took a little while for us to get going. We naively thought we would go with AV1, we'd turn up, we'd plonk it in the school and it would all be fine. But actually it wasn't quite like that, was it?
Always a lot more complicated.
Right, I'm going to pass you over to Sarah.
I'll give you the iPad as well. Thank you very much.
Hello, I was introduced from outside of the room, but it became really noisy outside because there's not many people inside, so it kind of played with my brain a little bit. And I feel like I should stand up here regardless. So my name is Sarah Dove, and I'm the project manager for the Innovation Fund project. We had lots and lots of dilemmas when we started this, and I think for me, when I heard about this project, my instant reaction was, it's a robot. It's children that are poorly. For me, it was a no-brainer, but obviously we know that schools are larger systems and things are a lot more complicated than that. So one of the dilemmas are which children are eligible for this project. And with the Department of Education and the Innovation Fund, they were very clear that it was for young people with health needs that were accessing treatment from the certain partners. So we have children at Great Ormond Street Hospital, right up to Manchester Hospital. We've got places like Shepwell Short Stay School, and lots of places in between. But you can imagine that if you're a parent or a teacher for a child who's really incredibly unwell, we get lots of messages about people thinking this will help. So that was one of the dilemmas about who is actually eligible for this project. But also, the data that we're collecting, does it really tell us about the needs of the children we're working with? It's really difficult, isn't it? Because we know that one child who might have leukemia is incredibly different from another child, or a young person that might be accessing specialist provision who also has the same diagnosis. It's very, very different. So the data that we're collecting includes things like attendance, and that feels quite easy, doesn't it? Because if a child is unwell and they're at a hospital, they might not be getting education at all. But let's say that they were attending 100% of school before they become unwell, then the AV1 doesn't really tell us much either. So it becomes quite complex with that. But also when we're looking at things like pupil progress data, Cath and I were talking the other day that actually every primary school known to man has a different way of collecting data. So I don't know about you, but I got my school report from my daughter yesterday, who's 9, and she's got 6s and Bs. I know what Bs mean, and I went, 6s? No idea. Now, if you imagine that nationally across the country, how are we comparing this data becomes really problematic. So one bit of data that we've looked at, for example, is we have an organisation called eCoris, which is, if you were here in the earlier one, which is looking at case studies, but we're also looking at a personal development scale that you've designed, which looks at children's readiness to reintegrate into school, and we've got a mixture of things like strength and difficulties and more kind of frequent assessments around emotional well-being. One of our dilemmas is, does AV1 support attendance in school and improve this? Now, one of the things that schools are really frightened about, well, if they're anxious, are they going to use the AV1 robot to avoid going to school? And actually, we found the opposite is true. So what we have found is twofold. And obviously, things happen with the AV1 where maybe people live in poor infrastructure, for example, they haven't got the signals they need. And sometimes they get sick and tired of AV1 not working in the way that it ought to, but they've already started developing relationship with their peers, and they go, well, I'm going to get to school, I'm going to go to school. So that's things like anxiety. But also what we've found is that some children might have barriers in terms of time lapsing, going back to school again. So if you imagine that you've been undertaking treatment or you've had hospital admission, that actually you might be out of school for 6 months. Now we know that when we've been off work, and I'm going to put that in inverted commas, for 6 weeks, actually going back to school on the first day is really problematic. Imagine if you're a child and that you're poorly and you've got 30 other children in your class asking where you've been. What we found is the AV1 can really support children in narrowing that gap. The other question is, why AV1 or other telepresence solutions compared to video conferencing, e.g. Skype? Now that's a really good question. Now, one thing that we found with Skype, for example, is you can just have the sound on, can't you? So you don't necessarily see the face. But because there's an option for it, people might say, I'll switch the camera on. Now, we know that children undertaking treatment for medical needs, they might look different, they might put on weight, or they might be undertaking quite aggressive treatment that makes them feel and look different. Or children with anxiety, for example, may not want to be seen. What the AV1 does... Oh, he looks so sad.
He's a bit sad because he's off school.
Oh, and he's worried about what his peers think. oh, that's really heartbreaking. Then actually, children prefer the kind of distancing with it as well, so that's been really helpful. Will AV1 replace real human contact? The quick answer is no. It's about young people accessing the education they would otherwise have access to. So it's not about teachers using AV1, it's about the young people being able to access their mainstream class, so that's really important. People are generally quite suspicious of that, which is fine. So the current use in terms of gender in key stage, we have very little data at the moment. I think Cath explained it's because we're only 6 months in, and because the young people's needs are so diverse, it's really difficult to kind of get a sense of it. I'm going to feel really technological here because I'm going to use that look at that. That is amazing. There we are. It's no surprise that key stage 1 and 2 here, broadly speaking, male and females are kind of the same. We can see here females start to be more. I don't know why. I wonder why. Maybe it's because young people who are girls are more likely to be diagnosed with anxiety and have access to AV1 rather than behavioural difficulties. But really, we don't have enough information. And also, one of the things that we talk about is people say, is the AV1 easier in key stage 1 and 2? Now, I think there's more of an investment from teachers to work with children in key stage 1 and 2 primary, because often their needs are really life-limiting and life-threatening conditions relating to things like leukemia and cancer. And you can imagine, as a teacher with a child who's incredibly unwell, that you're going to try and think of all different solutions, and this can be a really good one. But also primary schools are set up differently. So you have one room, one teacher. You don't have to convince a whole school. So that makes it easier. But actually, as you can see from the data, actually key stage 3 and 4 are being used quite well. And key stage 5, we've got a couple of young people as well. So that's surprising, I think. The other thing is, again, around, is it mental health needs or physical health needs? Again, it's absolutely no surprise that the young people in key stage 1 and key stage 2 predominantly have physical health needs, and those are going to be your life-limiting, life-threatening things. Key stage 3, there's a significant jump here in terms of mental health needs and young people accessing the AV1 access and education. And these are the young people that might traditionally have had home tutoring in their home environment. So some of the young people, home tutors might have gone to their home. The young people may have refused to see the home tutor because it's another person. But actually, they've really utilised AV1, and that's a really good success story from Shepwell Short Stay School. And also, because we know people's needs are really complicated, some have combination, that actually their physical health needs have perhaps led to mental health and vice versa. So in terms of opportunities, one great thing, and in fact, I suppose because you've been doing a lot of the partnership working, so I'm going to step back for a moment. Do you want me to be, I'm going to call it mini-meep when it's me. Shall I be mini-meep?
told we've got to stand over here.
Oh, I haven't done it at all.
So, sorry. Before we go into that, you really want to know how it works, don't you, actually? So I'm going to get Sarah to hold that up. Oh, sorry, I'm going to have to go around the other side.
I've got a teacher's voice, so I don't feel like I need a microphone.
So you can see it is operating through an iPad. There's an app on the iPad. There's a unique code, and every robot has a unique code. One robot, one user. And that's deliberate so that the data is secure. This is a two-way speaker so that the child can hear the teacher's voice, they can hear their mate's voice, but more importantly, it is the child's voice that comes from here. That's the most powerful because basically it's representing them. It's called AV1. We're not allowed to call it he or she. It's not allowed its own Twitter account because it represents the child. So a young person I had using one last year called Zoe, hers is called Zobot. So each one of them have got different names because they are representing them. Some have got football scarves, some have got school ties, some have got stickers. It is them, it is them. In the top here is a camera which streams live pictures, end-to-end encrypted and not recorded. If you try to screenshot or record, it automatically shuts it off. So in terms of safety and GDPR, there's an awful lot of stuff about the servers it goes around, and you'll be very pleased to know I don't know that off by heart.
but there is details about that on our school website that you can access. So this is a live feed, so the child is actively participating in the lesson. In the app itself, there is a volume control, so you've got a louder voice for answering questions and a smaller voice for participating in group work. If within the app you want to tell your teacher you've got a question to ask, and without shouting, "Oi, got," so I can put my hand up and you can see the head of the AV1 flashing. That means the teacher knows you've got a question to ask. If I'm in hospital and I'm actually not feeling all that well, I would just like to listen to my lesson today, my head turns blue and the teacher knows I'm present, I'm participating, but actually I'm just nice and quiet. The eyes are actually ornamental, they don't do anything, but the original one didn't have expressive eyes. The young people said they wanted to communicate to their friends how they were feeling. So there are happy eyes, sad eyes, and puzzled eyes. I'm a particular fan of the puzzled eyes because one eye, I can't do it, but one eyebrow goes up and one eyebrow goes down. There are some issues with connectivity. That's been our biggest barrier so far that we've come across, but actually we've had many more success stories than others. We work with two different types of schools. We work with TIGA schools and we work with EOR schools. So the TIGA schools go, "Oh my word, this is amazing, I can't wait to get it in." And the EOR schools go, "Oh, I think the GDPR one." And I can see you laughing because you know exactly what I mean. What we're finding though is the TIGA schools are really big advocates. And there's been a lot of publicity, a lot of TV coverage, and we've made sure in each of the areas, 10 different areas, that we're connecting with the local radio, local TV, and the schools that are using it, we're bigging them up actually. And some of the other schools are like, "I'd like a little bit of that positive publicity." So we're kind of working along those lines. So that's. I thought you might want to know how it works. So back to this bit. So in terms of partnership working, there are, as I say, there are 10 different groups of us, from Manchester in the north to Bristol in the south, Great Ormond Street, hospital schools, medical crews, working across all sorts of different settings, primary, special, secondary schools, lots of partnership working there. Starting to get partnership working with charities who bought them as well, because as I say, that naive thing about plonking it in the school, before we could put it out, we've had to develop a whole set of resources, presentations for staff, presentations for parents, homeschool agreements, risk assessments, etc. So there's a whole pack of materials. We're just saying to the charities, there they are, send them to schools, and we've linked with lots of schools who are not part of the project because actually it's in our interest for the young people that are using it. Some of the health colleagues are getting interested in, so in Manchester, my colleague there did a presentation to the oncology community, to paediatricians there. They're now going to him and saying, "I've just seen a child, I think would be really good for AV1. So starting to spread that word about it. And actually just reminding the paediatricians that education is really important for young people who are ill, because that's the point where you park your illness on one side and you are just another ordinary child in the classroom. And the film clip we'll show you at the end will explain exactly what that does. Safe learning, so we have young people come into hospital periodically who have cystic fibrosis. They're obviously very high risk for infection. They can only access maybe a little bit of schooling because they can't go to the schoolroom. You've also got children in what they call the hot room in Great Ormond Street that are all having radiotherapy. They can't go out there. You have old lead suits to go in and everything else. But this means that they can participate even while they're in hospital. They can go to hospital school or they can go to their home school, which means they get increased number of hours, which means they don't fall as far behind, which minimises the impact of their illness on their education. Enrichment activities. AV1 was a shepherd in a school play in Northamptonshire. A boy with very complex medical conditions, never been in school to be able to rehearse it, never been enough. But he was able to have been in through AV1, that is now just part of his class, and he can get into school when he's well enough and not other times. It was a shepherd. unfortunately, I didn't take any pictures. It's been to the Cheltenham Literacy Festival. The girl who, with chronic fatigue syndrome, wasn't well enough to read her poem. She was able to read her poem and participate in the festival. It's been to Morrison's with a group of children this week on a school trip. It's been to the zoo in one of those baby papooses, facing out, so the teacher took the child to the zoo. So the enrichment activities. And let's face it, we don't go to school for the maths and English, do we? We go to hang out with our mates for that social interaction. And when you are ill, that is the biggest impact on you. And Sarah talked about a combination of medical and mental health. That brings your mood down. That impacts on your ability to be able to recover. And longer term, long after this project's finished, I'm really interested to know the psychological benefits of remaining connected and whether it supports recovery from serious disease and mental illness, which is another, but that's a whole other project, I feel. So I'm going to come back to the film clip. I'm going to go on to the last one. So where we are at the moment, as I say, it's working really well. 6 months in, it's showing us that it is making a significant impact. And I know some of you are here listening to the case studies. We've got some lovely case studies that people were sharing with us where it has significantly changed young people's lives. So one young person turned up for his maths GCSE. He just turned around, he said, I wouldn't be here taking my exam if I hadn't been able to use AP1. He's now got access to GCSEs, which means he's got access to college and further education. Significant differences. The child I spoke to about it with the complex medical conditions, the head teacher's gone the other way. He's got, which I'm reliably called his FOMO, fear of missing out. So he's given his mum a really hard time. Instead of saying, I don't want to go to school, he says, get AP1 on, they've got this, you know. So, and again, Sarah was talking about the not wanting to go to school. Our evidence is showing that it's supporting children to return to school. We commissioned somebody to design an in-app measure of loneliness. It was a professor from the States who'd created one for adults. So he's done that. So we're starting to collect data about children's sense of isolation and how it starts to impact on that. And you'll know from the work that you do, actually measuring a child's emotional and social health and emotional well-being is very, very complex. Hence we're using an in-house developed scale. And when I put in the bid, we were looking at using accredited scales, but one of the questions on the one we were using was, are you scared of dying? And if you're working with a child with a life-limiting illness, not a question I want to be asking. So we've had to kind of really jiggle with that. So the children with terminal conditions, does it help them? Does it mean that if anything happens to them, that the fact that they've been remained connected, does it help them support the child? Does it help the parents and the whole school community deal with it? The no isolation, the Telepresence solution was invented by a lady whose friend's daughter had died of cancer, and she happened to be talking to her, and the friend said to her, wasn't the chemo, wasn't the radio, wasn't the sickness, it was in the last 18 months of her life she didn't see anybody except her sister and her mum and dad, and she was very lonely, and she said that had a significant impact on her, and that's why AB1 was designed in the first place. So that's where we are with it. You can tell, I mean, we're quite passionate about children with medical needs anyway, but this project is really exciting to be able to offer an innovative, different way of working. And those schools that are embracing it are really embracing it and celebrating it, and the young people are benefiting. It does not work for everyone. So we had a secondary age student who said that was much too babyish to represent it. My colleague in Oxfordshire is doing a similar trial on a smaller scale using a telepresence solution called the Double 2, which looks a bit like an iPad on a Segway. So it's actually able to move itself around, but you can see the child. So, and he's just come to us, and in fact they just joined in the project with us because he said it's not suiting everybody. Because if you've lost your hair and you've swollen from the use of steroids, you don't want your mate seeing you like that, do you? This gives you a nice solution. or if you're too tired to get up that day, you can do it from your bed in your gym jams and nobody knows. So it's from that guy. So it's not the be-all and end-all, and the project really is not a sales pitch, but it is about how these types of solutions might make a difference. And the nice thing, as I say, it is the child's voice that comes here. They can operate it themselves. And with the Skype, you're forever moving a laptop around, and it doesn't have the same capacity and things to kind of make them engaged and involved. And I think that if we can show you the film clip, and I hope that this excellent, very talented young man in the corner here, no pressure, is going to show you the film clip. This young person, his name is Sam. He was treated at Great Ormond Street for cancer. He had a bone marrow transplant, so he was 6 months in a bubble. They call them the bubbles, where they're completely sterile, they're not allowed in or out. Very sadly, Sam has now passed away. But I show you this because his mother said all the time he was in, it was 1 hour of pure joy every day, cost him all of his energy, worth absolutely everything, because at that point he was a normal child in a normal classroom back with all of his mates. Have a look and see.
When the robot is called Mini Sam, he helps me go to school.
When Mini Sam's turned on, what can you see?
The class.
So all your friends in your class. And what normally happens when Mr. Williams turns Mini Sam on?
Morning, Sam.
Hello.
Afternoon, Sam. Good afternoon.
So the class has to say hello.
Yeah, and then what do you say back to the class?
Hello.
And what happens if you want to ask something? What do you
put up my
do?
hand.
When you put up your hand, how does Mr. Williams know you've got your hand up?
Because the AV1 lights its head up.
Sam's got his hand up. Sam?
21 to 5.
21 to 5. Fantastic. So directly across.
My favourite thing about Sam is that I can work with him.
My favourite thing about Sam is that we can talk to him when he's at home.
I think perhaps most importantly for him it's knowing what's going on during school without getting any germs, and just not feeling left out, feeling like he's still part of the class and that people haven't forgotten him.
That's the best demonstration I can give. Because, as I say, Sam is no longer with us, but we're hoping that, given a bit of time, that we can involve his mum in our steering group, because she was such a big advocate for the difference it made to him in that time in his life where potentially he could have been very isolated as well. But all of his friends are there, all of his friends, and as I say, we're going to do some follow-up with the school to talk to them. Did it make it easier or harder? You know, because actually dealing with the death of a school friend is very, very challenging, not only for young people but for the staff as well. But knowing that that school had made every effort to include Sam right up to that point, you know, you can put your hand on your heart as a teacher and say, we did our best by that people. We have run out of time, but if you want to ask any questions, we're not dashing off, and I think we've got a whole 10 minutes before we might have to vacate. But thank you very much for listening.